Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Welcome to everyone who's listening today to this brand new series that we have started, a podcast for Club 313, discussing some really fundamental issues for our communities and the youth in our community. And so I'll do a little bit of an introduction, and we've got a very important topic that we're going to be discussing today, inshallah. Before I go into that, I just want to give a little bit of an introduction of who Club 313 is and what we do and why we exist in the first place. So Club 313 is a youth organization, and our aim is that all the youth in our communities are confident, they're strong, they're mindful personalities, and they have the skill sets that they need to help the Imam of our time when that time arrives, and even before and after. And we do this by trying to really understand the challenges they face on a day-to-day basis, what's happening in their lives, and how we can create the platforms and how we can create an environment and opportunities for them to really kind of learn and get to know themselves and have the skills necessary so that they can move forward and do whatever they can to help the cause. We do many different topics. We have courses that we have been developing for almost 2 years now, very successfully. We've had a very good rate of join. A lot of people enjoy the courses and learn lots of things from them. We've covered vast different types of topics within our courses. They're usually 6 weeks, and we dissect the topic in a really proper manner so that we can really help our youth to understand what the subject is. So today, inshallah, as this is a brand new thing that we're starting, so we're really excited to get started with this. I have two amazing guests with me, and we decided to talk about a topic that is correlating, first of all, with the whole theme of our organization in the first place, which is Club 313 and associated with the Imam of our time, Ajal Farajahum. And so the topic is, are we doing anything to delay the arrival of the Imam, and what are we doing and what we can do to change that so that we can support the cause rather than hold it back. So let me start by introducing our guests here. So we have Brother Ali Jafri with us. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we also have Dr. Shahzad Sayed. Both of these are actually people who help Club 313 in the background as well. So do a lot of work with us to create whatever it is that we create. So thank you so much for your support and everything that you do. So let's get into today's topic. So I just want to open up the floor just to kind of say what you feel about this topic in the first place, and then we can go into some questions. So let's start with Brother Ali.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think it is it's a very crucial topic for all of us to reflect on, whether we're a brother or a sister, or in late stages of life, or in our youth, adults working, people who are at home, everyone, because an Imam is someone we are all connected to, and he's got a very special place in our lives. But before we go into understanding the factors of delay, which are a number of factors, because we always pray for his reappearance, and apparently we are doing a lot of things and are ready for his reappearance, but the reappearance keeps getting delayed, and no one's got an idea of when that can happen. So it's good to think about what we can do, or if there are any causes which are related to us, so at least at a personal level we can do something about it. So if we just step a little back and try and understand and be very clear on what Imamat is all about, that will take you back into history, and I won't go into a history lesson here, but from the time the Prophet left this world and handed over to Imam Ali, the government or the Islamic system is is something that we all sort of hear a lot about. What happened in Imam Ali's time, and then in different imams, all the way up to the last imam's time, in Imam Hassan Askari's time, and finally, when Imam Zamana went into the occultation. So that period of how we were supposed to be following an imam, and the purpose of imam's existence at that time, which was to form or to introduce Islamic laws and Islamic system of life, from Imam Ali's time all the way up to the living Imam's time. That still is very much the case. So the Imam exists. He is alive. He's there, and he's doing all his duties. He's just not in front of us, but he's very much there and part of this world. So that's one thing to sort of understand, and also where are we at the moment? So imams, all the imams have been doing what they were sort of supposed to do, and that continues. But we, it's more something to do with us. That either we are not ready, or we are not in that state where we can support the imam, because all the imams have had this situation where there were less people supporting them than the larger population, and that's the current situation. There has to be less people, otherwise if there were lots of people, then there was no reason for imam not to come out. So that's something what we will look into, that if everything is happening good from the imam side, obviously there is definitely Allah's will involved in this. If we are perfect and imam is doing what everything is, in Allah's will is not there, then that will not happen. But if we assume that Allah his will is there, and imam is doing his own duties, then what are some of the reasons that we can think of that may be contributing to his delays? We'll also touch on, because imamat is all about divine leadership, and with leadership comes the concept of followership. So how to be a good follower and how to think in those lines, and that thinking would then impact our actions, and inshallah then we can contribute to hastening of the reappearance of Imam, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. That beautiful insight. And it is definitely a topic that we all need to start getting very, very conscious about. We talk about it, and if sometimes, like you said, we talk about it a lot. And if we were doing it in a proper way, then there might not have been such a big delay. So obviously there is something deeper that we need to start pondering on. So these conversations are very, very vital, and I'm so glad that we're here and talking, and thank you so much for your contribution. Brother Shahzad, I'd like to come to you about your thoughts on this.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum to all the so I have formulated a few thoughts, and then we can work around some of these concepts and then other things that we can discuss. So Imam Mahdi I'm sure, is cripplingly awaiting the command of Allah to inspire justice, abundance, and equity in the world. Although he may be apprehending a great resistance, first of all from his enemies, but also a lack of support from his so-called compatriots, followers, and supporters. The sublime characterization of principled ethical and moral judgment, justice, and rule is around the corner, in my opinion. But as Muslims and followers of the Mahdi, the youth and the elders need to do more. That's how I feel. It must be reconciled. He is for the masses, and the masses need to be aware of his presence. The first challenge is the realization that he is present and coming. Too many people assume that this is the best it will get, the West, first and second East to third. The Western countries' values take precedence over orthodox Islamic injunctions, not to blame, as there is seldom a religious representative nation that can epitomize true Islamic values and character, unfortunately said. By a handful, and they are in the evolution of resistance through unjust malevolence, so unable to manifestly actualize. So bombing in Yemen, stripping of Iranian authority, promoting Saudi savagery, feeding Israeli apartheid and Palestinian destruction. All of these are foreign policies which have stained the rhetoric of the so-called champions of human rights. Granted, systems management and legal process is followed unprecedentedly better in the UK, for example, comparing to other civilized and non-civilized nations. However, un-Islamic by virtue, we can't say this is the government of Allah's promised nation. So the thought this is the best it's going to get, we can't say that. And the Mahdi will be here to reconcile these inconsistencies, but it requires manifest support from inherent lovers and cordial supporters. So in society, there is a flagrant continuation of personal struggle towards attaining worldly ascension and comfort. So we kind of want the job satisfaction, finding one's passion, promoting financial freedom, and then exercising charitable gains. They're all important pursuits, but at the expense of a strong fortress of correct ideological perspective. Some have awoken to the reality of spiritual wayfaring, ascension, and connection, yet the path is rocky and uncertain, so full of confusion, danger, and unseen threats. Youth are distracted, unnurtured, resistant, but hopeful. A greater understanding pervades, from my generation at least, from when I was growing up. There's a lot of madrasas, lecturers, and resources are more pervasive, so there's a lot in the community, but fitna, lust, and intoxicants also prevail, opening fortresses of piety to be broken down by shaitani influences and attacks. Some of the processes that can be employed now until the Zuhur are plenty. These include, first and foremost, to spiritually align with Islamic edicts of ascension and wayfaring. One must taste the delights of connection with Allah, to instill light within the soul and rectify internal struggles, to hold nur and ilahi ethics, sublime morals, perfect akhlaq, and divine connection will precipitate true God-centric worldly growth, along with accruing good deeds to fortify strength of hearts and minds. This will expand consciousness, guide accurately, and manifest serendipity, and attract purpose in God contractually. So God will do things for this individual if he connects. As per Quran and Ahlul Bayt, all teachings are there. Just need honing and focusing and cherry picking as per societal needs. So we have all the knowledge, it just needs to be cherry picked, plus some new knowledge from the ghaib that the Mahdi will extol to catalyze the change in the ummah. With true Ilahan principles, a veil of misunderstanding has to uncover true illumination. One must look within and express without, fight demons and fight egoic tendency, and correct spiritual wayfaring pathways, light extensions to Allah and elevations into pure conscious Allah nature is one's prerogative, and wisdom by any means, be that from traditional or new age philosophies. Truth can be wrapped in any paper, but needs to be enjoyed regardless of Christmas wrapping or Eid wrapping. And all this peppered with action, with knowledge, with wisdom, with reason, and with intellect, and heart and soul. To perfect oneself is making one ready for the Mahdi and a part of his 313. Secondly, holding an Islamic perspective that shines and presents surrender to Allah in an accurate and representative light. Scholars and rulers are integral in coordinating this effort. A lot of rhetoric about personal connection, salah perfection, and Quranic connection has been flagrantly expressed. However, modern day affairs promoting Islamic priorities of thinking and proper flourishing of God-centric governments need addressing through and beyond those scriptures, adapting to the current state of affairs appropriately and principally. Believers and Mormon alike are distressed with current circumstances. The Zuhur is near, but rulers and ulama need to change focus. Proper identification of moral, spiritual, and ethical vices, steps to self-purification, martyrdom of nafs, and God-centricity and esoteric spiritual channeling is as equally important and pertinent as assessing system problems, discrepancy in Alian ethics and governmental hypocrisy, and Muslim world challenges and errors of governing. Postulations of ideas of fortifying family rhetoric and correct nuclear structures, husband and wife cohesion and Mahdi ethics, grasping community opportunities and establishing an out-of-scholar outfit pursuit and career, be that in galvanizing communities towards a religious ideology and extending entrepreneurship and wealth generation and distribution, to elaborate on government functioning, financial and welfare principles, and organizing intra and extra communication paradigms and processes through a course of learning and teaching, galvanizing relationships with wisdom rather than ideologies, but promote the youth to observe worldly challenges and deriving critical solution to all challenges from a scholarly lens and promote them rather than dissuade them. Furthermore, correct the edict of modern day Islamic thinking. It is easy to compete and resist against a protagonist who may be perceived or actual villainizations of Islamic nations. This principle of resistance being the pinnacle of root, extension, fortification of faith, and strengthening of principles may not be idealistic in the truest modern day extension of Islamic progression. This is important because one must manifest correct competitive values akin to the field of today. Some promote soft war principle. My thoughts are economic resistance and fighting with system trumping establishments, managing affairs of the poor, and systemize correct edicts towards automation of financial, social, welfare, and health sectors. And I'm not going to lie, the UK is principled in this, to fortify the gaps and harbor iterations of inconsistencies in holes in so-called well-oiled machines. These iterative steps and stop checks, and fail-safing principles through guidelines or media strategies to legal consistencies make the system progress and economically thrive. It's a sense of control, stripping autonomy and brainwashing, usurping rights and unjust proxy killings and control. Clearly off the back of principles of justice, but not piety of Islamic jurisprudence. This is where Islamic governments should trump Machiavellian capitalistic hegemonies. All of this would be Mahdi's prerogative. All of the principles of transparency, justice, and collaboration. This will be steered by the hand, will, and spirit of Allah, which we'll be the ambassadors for. And finally, my final point is, it must, however, be reconciled and balanced fairly that Islamic edicts is far from ideal in predominantly Muslim countries. Corruption, usurping wealth, violence, insecurity, poor hygiene, sanitization, harboring terrorism, despotism, and ignorance all play a role in major part in Muslim diasporas dotted around the world, from failing in correct vein. Long hopes, reliance on wealthier counterparts, begging, unhealthy trade, lying, cheating, and morally indecent acts and tearing the fabric of emotionally development and causing spiritual stagnation, surviving over thriving. So granted, some external influences preventing progression, I agree with that, but this is where true Islamic values need perpetrating, which will attract and trump all non-God-centric ideologies. Hence, Mahdi's arrival and hence global awakenings will occur, but with initial steps need to be taken. Leaders and youth have to take heed and develop themselves, develop their voice and develop their action, all in the same vein.
Thank you so much for your elaborate contribution. There was a lot in what you said. There's a lot of coherence needed, I'm hearing, from governmental level to domestic to individual. So there's a lot to ponder over and tons of actionable steps for every single person who hears anything like that. So I'd love to take the discussion a little bit further, and I want to start with asking, do we feel that our youth are in a position to, first of all, understand, but then secondly, an extension of that, to support the Imam? Do we think that that's something that we're ready to have our youth do? Brother Ali, what's your take on this?
That's an important question, actually, because there's a lot of hope in our youth, and a lot of concern by a lot of adults, that our youth should get the right path as soon as possible, so that they can become like good members of the society going forward. But I think to answer that question, if the youth are in a position to understand what the problem is and support the Imam, we need to see what are the sources of knowledge for our youth in current times, and that makes me think of the madrasa like straight away. That that's about 90% of the young people, like from like 5 to 6 years to about 13, 14 years. They have some sort of madrasa these days, maybe online madrasas, and they follow a certain curriculum. So that part covers, from my understanding, the fiqh, aqaid, history, side of things. And if you summarize that, it's the wajibat and the mustahabat and what they are meant to know, which is absolutely essential in the day-to-day life of things. And also the youth are fairly young at that time, so they might not be able to understand the more complicated subjects, and the more complicated issues around what's required to support the Imam. Now, as soon as they get into their sort of understanding age, so this is like the late secondary sort of time, unfortunately, there's no sort of proper education available, or guidance, or coaching in that area. So they have to rely on lectures and majlises and YouTube, and maybe like their own Google searches, and some discussions between their own friends, or with elders, or maybe scholars as well. So I think that's where it starts to all change. And there is, because we're talking about factors, and then are we contributing in the delay. So I think one of the delay that we may be causing is not having those systems available for the youth to be developed in a structured way. And at this point, I think the time is to commend Club 313 for the past about 18 months or so.
Yeah.
Sister Uzma like had this sort of thought, and we came up with a whole program of what areas need to be developed, and alhamdulillah, with the support of the Imam and Allah, progressing on that. So that's one area. The other side is what I really feel is around the parenting side. So the youth are to be questioned on the what are they doing and what they're not doing. But at the same time, parents are either equally or probably more responsible to first learn themselves. And they may have passed that stage of the madrasa and the madlises and the lectures, and now they have firmed up their sort of beliefs and ideologies. But they need to understand and have those discussions and form some good conclusions on what are the problems, what are the solutions, and what are they going to sort of do about it. So as a community, as we've got, alhamdulillah, a lot of organizations in the UK, working towards various Islamic causes. So some sort of parenting, lectures, programs, that would really help in bringing parents up to the level where they can now give that platform or those resources to the youth to carry on what is required to be done. And just lastly, this is like my personal observation, in the places I go to. Whenever we have to call the youth, to do something or an activity, I just feel like there's too much pizza and sport. So we're kind of attracting them to come in, and there will be pizza there. There will be lots of sports there, and let's just squeeze in a bit of sort of Islamic, reminders in there too. Now that's kind of good, but I just feel like we're conditioning them to say that the bigger purpose is you come and play and do all the other things, and then discreetly and quietly telling them a few things, which may be like a 10-minute talk or something like that. So I'm not sort of denying the fact that we have to gather them because they've got lots of worldly attractions to be engaged in, and their studies, that they have to be sort of involved in, and lots of other like responsibilities and commitments. So to get that time out and sort of redirect them to a particular purpose, you have to find interesting ways of doing that. But that time, so once we have got the youth in a center, in a discussion, in a lecture, it needs to be very carefully planned and thought of, and kind of assessed in the end on did we achieve the purpose. So we've got them in to tell them about the reasons, what they can do to support their mom. At the end of it, did they actually got it, or do they only remember the FIFA and and all the other fun activities, as they call them, they have. So it just requires a little bit of a thought. I think the youth have got a lot of potentials. I've met a lot of youth who are really genuinely interested in this. Some of them have gone to a slightly extreme side, and ready to do anything. But it all needs to be sort of balanced out with some careful planning. But there is potential, and one of the reasons for the delay could be us adults not planning the youth time in a perfect way.
Yes, some really valid points that you've made there, actually. And I think one of the points you made is so crucial about, so we nurture them, or try to nurture them through the system of madrasa and such seminaries. And then when they get to that very, very vulnerable age, where they're starting to form their own identities and starting to fit into cliques and different places to find a sense of belonging, that's the most vulnerable age, if you like. And then we just kind of say, we're done. You're on your own, kind of thing. And I think that's of course the former age is very, very important, but I think that is an age that we need to stay with them, and really, really stay with them in a systematic way. I'm sure that individually a lot of families are doing some great work with their individual children, but I think if there was one of the things that I think we're still lacking, to me it's a tragedy, considering that we're a close-knit, small little small little community, if you like, and we're still not tight, we're still not united in many, many ways. So I think that if we had our heads together and had some system where we're not dropping them off of the radar, but we're picking them up in that stage, a lot could change, because it's the place where the nurturing can continue. So, and the other thing I'm hearing is that the lack of excitement. I think the fact that we're enticing them in through the things that they might be interested in, then kind of squeezing in the bit, I think is also a really important point. But I think also that if we haven't done our job properly, and I don't want to say it job properly, but if we haven't instilled the love up to that age, then that's why we're having to do all these different tactics to kind of pull them in, rather than this being a phenomena that is so interesting that they are intrigued themselves and they really want to find out what this is. And our belief system is so amazing that they want to be a part of it. And this gave me a little bit of an idea, actually, because we deliver courses already, and all of these courses are actually our aim is to develop these people so that they have the skills to support the Imam. So that's what we say in our aims and objectives of the whole organization, Club313. We should have it integrated within every single course, that at the end or throughout the course, we're constantly reminding our youth how you utilize this particular thing that you're learning, whether it's effective communication, whether it's dealing with anxiety, whatever it is we're dealing with. How do we connect this learning to how we're going to support the Imam and how we prepare ourselves for the Imam? Amazing points. Thank you so much for your contribution. Brother Shahzad, I'd love to hear your view on this as well.
Yeah, this is a really important question. I appreciate the value that you guys have put in to this conversation. The question would be, are youth in a position to understand and support the Imam? So in my opinion, there has to be the end goal, which is going to be Labbaik Ya Mahdi. So when the Mahdi calls, then we stand up and are ready for him. And that means we have to look at the youth and split them up into times in their life. So Islamically, in the Hadith, it says that the first 7 years of Islamic life, the child's life, is where you treat them as a king or a queen. And that's where, in my opinion, is where parental support comes into play. This is just nurturing the ground for them to be receptive for the next 7 years, which is going to be treat them as your, well, it says as your servant, but somebody that you train, basically. So, and you kind of touched on it quite nicely. And this is where the school comes in, which Brother Ali has mentioned quite accurately with the madrasas and getting their inspiration from there. So that's the parents, and that's where the madrasa comes into play. And the next 14, so 14 onwards to 7 years, would we treat them as a friend. And I think you kind of put that in quite nicely, Sister Osma, with the with what Club 313 are doing. We're treating them as equals in the sense that we're teaching them from highly inspiring scholars and people of the community who can give that information, that knowledge to people. So when they've done their 21 years of life, they're ready to say, I'm ready for the Mahdi. Now, looking at each of those briefly, I see some discrepancies in all of them, and I think we can all work to improve them as a community. So the first 7 years with the parental support, I touched on it in my speech briefly. I think a lot of us parents start thinking that the West is where the fortress of experience lies. And yeah, we want knowledge, we want experience, but we need to bring it back to the Islamic values and traditions and what the Ahlul Bayt say. So as we get older, we should learn from scholars who have that knowledge that we can impart on the children. So I think I was having a conversation not too long ago, is that if there is nothing in the, if we belittle the West so much and say that it's not that good or it's not that experienced, which I'm not saying at all, but where do we go from there? Because the East isn't that good either. So how do we work on the Islamic principles? And that's where we have to look within the scriptures and the books to see what is the Mahdi, what is the Imam saying, and what is that reality? And then have those discussions at the dinner table, have those discussions after madrasa, and not just leave the child to their own accord and trying to learn from YouTube or Google, which is important, but it's also driving that nurturing reality. But obviously in the first 7 years, it's really, really, really important to develop a connection with the child, because I think children need love, attention, and emotional satisfaction at that age. They're not there to learn all of the Furu'ud-Din, Usul-ud-Din to the perfect level. It's almost they have to express their love for the parent and attachment, which I think a lot of us are trying, but with the job, with the working world, with the working families, it's really hard to do. And I think connection is really important. Being a dad of a 2-year-old, I've noticed that a lot of children's needs need that connection. And I think connection is where we need to bring for the youth. The madrasas, I can't say anything, because I didn't go through madrasa myself. So I don't know the way that it's working, but I know from people who are madrasa teachers and the way that, my nephew is doing madrasa as well, they have a really strict curriculum and they kind of follow that quite well. So I'm not saying that there's anything that's lost in that sphere. And there is a lot of thought behind this, especially with the World Federation coming up with a curriculum that is helping in that regard. It's just during that period, fortifying that with the parental influence and societal needs is really important. I find it that a lot of society promotes us to lust, to shahwa, to fitna, and we have to prevent that from 3 things, I think. The first is prayer, because I think that needs to be focused on in children's upbringing, is that prayer is the shield that you need against the problems of the world. And secondly is almost a sort of spiritual enlightenment. So kind of get close to Allah in the heart. A lot of us just read the Furu'ud-Din and the Usul, and we kind of do the activities of worship, whereas the real essence of worship and why we do it needs to develop at a certain age. I would say that's probably later on. And the third thing is action. A lot of us talk the talk, but when it comes to acting, there is that lack of action that we need to develop in our children. So when it comes to the third stage of life, when the Imam does come, will we say, yes, labbaik, I'm coming? He rises in the east, he's in Medina, he's got his he's got his labbaik, he's got the Sufyan attacking him, he's got, Jesus is coming down from the skies, and then there has to be the 313 that comes. Club 313's motion is to try and get them to that level, to say, we will travel through snow to find you. and that needs to be in our upbringing in children. I would really strongly say, though, you don't need to be that, you don't need to highlight yourself as being a anti, rhetoric for the society. It's not about belittling or denigrating the way that we've been brought up. It's almost learning from the system and almost adapting it to an Islamic perspective. And I think that's what we're doing in Club 313. So there's a few stages we need to look at.
Yeah, I think that's wonderfully spoken. Actually, you've covered a lot of points there. And what I'm hearing as well, that there is maybe a more connection needed from the madrasa age between the parents and the madrasa, so that they can be really aware of where the pitfalls are, and if there's certain youth that are dropping off the radar or straying, rather than doing it in a really kind of stern way that's going to put off the child and maybe not want to attend altogether, to have a coherence between the parent and the madrasa and come up with strategies that they're not wanting to run away from the whole thing, but rather want to stay connected. I think that the 3 points that you mentioned are hugely vital, and being a life coach myself, and I teach a lot about parenting as well, you've hit the nail on its head when you're talking about these three crucial stages in life, and particularly the earliest stage of 0 to 7 is paramount. I mean, there's just not enough emphasis that I can give on this, and a lot of people are now learning, and very thorough research that's been put into this, scientifically proven now, that these ages are crucial in the belief systems that we hold for the rest of our lives. It starts from 0 to 7. So I think it's very important for us to instill the love and the values that we hold as a family, that are, and at the same time, I think it's also so important not to destroy the essence of a child because we want them to be rigidly fitting into a box. It's allowing the child to be who they've come to be, but at the same time nurturing them into what our belief system is. And I think there's a fine line between how we do that, and of course that would require a whole new topic in its own right. So thank you so much for your contributions. I'd love to move on because in the interest of time, I think we're aiming to finish by 1:45. So I'd love to ask, do you think our community, and I think we've touched on a lot of this, but if you could briefly let me know what your thoughts are do you think our communities are ready for the arrival of the Imam? I'll go with Dr. Shazad.
So that's a big question. I think it needs proper analysis. A lot of the communities are composed of a few people. There's the scholars, there's the rulers in our communities, and there are the people in that community, and the specialists and people who are part of traditions on both sides. So we need to see what community involves in. I mean, I've alluded to it into the speech quite detailed, where there is a lacking of community spirit in certain aspects. I would say the intention is there. The community really wants to promote this Mahdivistic thought, and there's always the dua for his protection in every sphere of life. But if I was to say, if the Mahdi's government was to come tomorrow, do we have the expertise in our society? Do we have the specialist knowledge in our society? Do we have this function and the thought process, at least the preparation of the soul? And then you'd have to think of the systems that are going to be in place. Obviously, we're working in a capitalistic system. We're working in a individualistic society, and a society that promotes self-actualization and like some sort of selfish pursuit is what the main goal of the government trying to promote. But there is also that being a community and helping others, and that welfare side of things, which they do well as well. So the NHS, which I'm part of, is an establishment which provides free healthcare for the people that are in need, to the best of their ability, with all the pressures of the world in place. So establishments like that, I don't see it anywhere else in the Islamic world where you have that level of suggestion. I mean, so that's a concept that the communities can work towards to build in society. Other things that you can see are the justice system. You don't see there are sometimes in the West or in the UK where justice is quite looked at in a very esteemed way. But in the Islamic world, the system is almost based on non-Islamic rhetoric. So we almost got the marja, we've almost got the ulama and the akhlaq from those people, and then they've got their books of fiqh. But we don't have a governmental system, we don't have our own in our communities. When there is a judgment that needs to be passed down to somebody about a certain ethical or religious problem, then we don't get that sort of support in our communities. There isn't a madrasa which says, according to Sistani or according to Ayatollah Khamenei, you have to follow this rule. And we don't take that opportunity to go to these people and take them as gospel, as the truth, basically. So having a justice and legal system in that way where the Islamic fiqh can build, that will build the community up better. And then finally, I think interactions within the community. I think there is a lot of muddying of the waters about what it means to be a Muslim. And I think a lot of people start veering from two extremes. There's either the really extreme society, like the viewpoint that you have to be hardcore, I wouldn't say Taliban as such, but I would say quite nearer, the extreme end. And then you've got the liberal side of things, which kind of like be allows certain concepts in society to, promote, alcohol and, infidelity, things which are acceptable in the society. You got the health secretary, Matt Hancock, being lost from his job for what he did with his aid when he, and that's a kind of, it's not accepted, but it also is like almost a norm which we're living. And the Muslims have to navigate these two extremes, whereas the community almost in this society, we're kind of veering towards center left, towards the more liberal side of things, which means that our voices aren't spoken up. And we kind of feel a bit pressured not to make ourselves stand out, which doesn't mean we have to be obtuse or belligerent. It just means we have to be a bit more forthright in our concepts and our principles, which then goes back to the scholars. Are they teaching those principles of, standing up against? I mean, I had a recent, I go to Jummah Namazes quite regularly, and the promoting of taqwa and everything that you do on a daily basis. When we come to the mosque, we are doing that by being in the mosque and by promoting that and the Quranic injunctions, but to relate it more to the system that we're going through, I think is where the communities need to focus on. And that's my thoughts.
Thank you for that. Yes. And I think when you said the community is kind of segmented in several different parts, and it's not that we lack talent within our communities, because there is a huge amount of talent within our communities. I think what we're lacking is more the togetherness, the unity aspect. And there's a fine example right before our eyes, which we experience every single year. And it blows our mind every time we think about it, is that when communities unite, Arba'in type thing happens in a war-torn country where they have nothing to their name, and they treat the royalty of royalty like royalties and beyond. Like it's beyond me how they manage to do that. And that is that's what you get when people just come together, and it becomes a priority. Like that's their standard, and they're not willing to step down. They're not in everybody. I mean, you see the children, you see the elderly who can't even stand properly, you see the the strong men doing the hard work, and the women involved, and everyone is on the same mission. And I think when communities come together, talent is not lacking. It's just that when we need it to come together, that's where you see the real impact, because there's pockets of just amazing work happening within our community all over the place. It's just happening singular, like here and there. And if we put that together, I think so much more could happen. So thank you so much for your points. Brother Ali, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the question, and I'd like to bring the Islamic centers into this conversation. And the role of a mosque and a center, because again, like linking back to the question, we've kind of like talked about the youth and in general as well. So on a wider scale, if you notice our the Shia side of Islam, mosques and Islamic centers are one of our major sort of highlights in all parts of the world. In London alone, like we're talking about like 20-25 centers in a small space, and then there's usually one like somewhere close by. or at least one in a city. So a center is what kind of guides the community, or if you want to know, like, what's happening in that community, that center sort of tells a lot of stories. So there's two discussions. Again, we've got obviously limited time, but one of the discussion is what services should the community center be providing, and we can compare that to what they're doing right now. So my observation, having been to I'd say like about 60% of the centers in the UK, is the focus over there, is the wajibat side of things. So definitely congregational prayers, are happening. Friday prayers are happening, and then we get into the what we call the love of the Ahlul Bayt side of things, and all the programs relating to Muharrams and wiladats and jashans and majlises and those things, and Ashura and Arba'in, sort of those bits. So these these are very, very important, and this is where the community unites. So if you see that as a first step, they've created something where the community can come in. However, the community has got a lot of other sort of requirements from an Islamic perspective, which are very, very local as well. So London's requirements to Leeds requirements to some of them will be similar, but they're different too. And some of our other Islamic sects are like doing it in a very good way. There are financial problems, social problems, religious, obviously. Even like technical issues or whatever the worldly sort of things are. There's lots of sort of needs of the community, and that's where if I see the lacking part is even if the lectures are arranged. So you see a lot of lectures going on in communities. It feels like kind of a one-off program based on a certain topic, which let's say even on a bigger scale, like 100 people attend and 100 attend online, and we are happy that we've covered a topic. It hasn't sort of reached out. So I think the requirement or what could possibly help in the reappearance part is the community centers realizing their essential role, having done the first part of uniting and giving identity to people, and help them in sort of every way possible. And that is very, very much linked to the volunteering part of things. I just feel that one of the reasons why that's not happening is there is very little time available for people to volunteer for these activities. I know some of them needs to be paid as well, because if someone is doing that for a living, that's important. But those people who have already got that part sorted, they need to come up with their time and sort of share their expertise. And if we again like all do our bit towards the community center, and the community center then in turn helps the community, we'll be a lot more readier for Imam's reappearance, inshallah.
Thank you so much for that. There's a lot in what you said, but a couple of things I'm thinking that if this was handled in this way, perhaps there would be more togetherness and again unity within our communities. Is that you mentioned about what services are provided within our centers. That should very much be based on the needs of the community, and I think that analysis is so far. No one knows what the community needs. No one's ever asked that question. And individually, I'm sure people go to their respective ulama and they get perhaps satisfactory answers. But in terms of like actually having a system that that's running, and what the needs of the community are covered within the center, because that's our like second home, if you like. That's our go-to place. That's where we build communities. And that's where our sense of belonging should be, aside from our own homes. And if we don't feel a sense of belonging within those setups, then there is something missing and there is a gap, and that's something that we can fulfill. And I think also, I mean, going back to the amount of talent there is within our communities, if we talked about it either in the way of volunteering or actually paid services where these professionals were actually integrated within the centers with the ulama to provide the services, then it could really really help. And I think that's also where we can fill the gap with the youth not feeling that sense of belonging, actually loitering outside of the center rather than going inside, because there's just not anything in there for them. So so I think there's, again, that
I think that could be a topic of our next podcast, like ideal Islamic center.
Yes, that's a good idea. I think yes, and we can do a poll on the internet and get people to give us some ideas and elaborate on them. We'll see how that goes. Thank you so much. I'll move on to the next question I have for you guys, and I think what we're just talking about falls really nicely into that. Can we help in forming an Islamic government? I'll go with Brother Ali this time first.
Okay, so again, it's quite a huge topic, to think about. But I'll really summarize this into a little thought, and I've discussed this with a lot of youth and some of my friends as well, in terms of setting a goal for life. So I meet a lot of people, and there's discussions like, from a lot of like sort of previous years, what is our goal of life, and everyone sets like sort of different sort of goals and purposes, and I know, like in life coaching, probably you set like purposes and goals and objectives of things, and after sort of reflecting and thinking about it a lot, I again like went back into history and just thought about like what was the purpose of the Prophet, for example, what was the purpose of Imam Ali, and even what is the purpose of Imam Mahdi. And I said, like, they are our leaders, we're the followers, and we kind of all know, there is a purpose of existence, and it's something very powerful. It's not just something to be taken lightly of as well. And I'm kind of like promoting this idea to other people, that let's set the purpose of our life to be able to help in forming a Islamic government. And then every action that you do, it is ultimately linked to that. We will never be able to, sort of get to that point where every one of us is, a prime minister, for example. But Imam, when he comes, inshallah, like, he is creating that system that Allah wants, in the world, which none of the Imams or the Prophets have been able to do in a full, comprehensive type of manner. And if we aim our lives towards helping in that, then certainly that could reduce that delay. How we can do that is linking all our, as I mentioned, like all our actions towards that. So if I'm working, why am I working? If I'm earning money, what is the money being used for? If I am respecting my parents, why am I doing that? If I'm doing something, volunteering in my community, why am I doing that? If I'm running an organization, if I'm playing sport, why am I playing sport? And then you can, if I had time, like I could just link that all the way to the point. If I'm, given an exam or learning a new skill, why am I doing? So all that can be linked to becoming someone useful for the Imam, and if you become useful in anything, even if you're a good cook, for example, or whatever you do, if you are just a parent and you just do nothing in terms of the wider sort of world, and your objective is just your child, or your focus is just the child. But link all that back to your purpose, which is Imam's purpose as well, and then we can help in forming that government and ultimately reduce that delay.
That's beautiful. And I think ultimately what we're doing here, if we lived that way, is we're expanding our consciousness, and we're basically saying we live in a way that we're consciously choosing what we do and why we're doing it. And that's exactly what, boils down to what taqwa is, and how, it's becoming aware and being connected with the divine at all times in whatever we do. And of course that would enhance our choices in how we live every single day. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Brother Shazad?
Yeah, thank you very much. So can we prepare? Now, Brother Ali said a really, really good point, because I feel like a lot of our society doesn't have a purpose in this government thought process. If I was to ask a youth on the street now, what's your purpose in life? It'll be make a living, get married, have kids, retire in a good house and a family. That'll be the generation that we had before. And there'll be sometimes they would say, I want to build a YouTube channel or a business or a website that will make me passive income for the rest of my life, go into crypto and have support that way. And then when I get older, I'll be able to support charity. And that's the concept. There'll be like my contribution on a mass scale would be I make lots of money and then put a percentage towards charity. And that's my Islamic privilege. I think that is a process that we as youth tend to focus on more, about the financial independence. But the conversation which Brother Ali and a lot of people should be focusing on is what the purpose of our life and existence is. And I think being a part of Imam Mahdi's government is really, really the crucial part of it. If you look at, and you mentioned it about Imam Ali's government, and if you look at Prophet Muhammad, what was their role? It was literally to bring Allah's hukumat on the earth. They came here to build the Quran is basically a set of principles that we can live by. It's a blueprint. It's the DNA of what Muslims should be doing. And it gives you the concepts through that. Now, if we've got the Quran there, if we've got the Ahl al-Bayt there, the purpose isn't to accrue lots and lots of good deeds to go to heaven, which is part of the process. But the concept is, if we have to act in the community, we have to do things. And by having that conversation, we open up channels, for example, to have this, you said community cohesion system about getting people together. Well, yeah, if that's the case, how does the West do it? How does Britain do it? They basically look at different places where there is a lack. They take up statistics in the community. They formulate ideas from that statistic and come up with a plan of action from there. How many times do you say in Ramadan, there are 1,000 families in our community, 200 of them don't have food, or they have limited food, or they're struggling. And therefore we need to build a system where we get in contact with the suppliers to provide food for them on a weekly basis. There are 50 homeless families in the community that need that coverage. So that sort of welfare system and that community-based thought only happens when we start thinking, what is my purpose? My purpose is to be in the Islamic government, and part of Islamic principles are those values. Not to say, and that's the first thing how we can help to realize what the purpose is. And the way we would do that is in a discussion at dinner time, parents or children say to their families, what's your thoughts on how we can help the Mahdi? That's a conversation which we can open up. As a doctor, I would start thinking, all right, I can earn money and be a specialist in my area. And then when the services arise, then I can start building establishments, hospitals, thought processes, systems to develop that in the community, and obviously use other people as support. We can't just do it all on our own. And when the Mahdi comes, he doesn't want people to just say, I'll give my blood and my life for the religion, but then that's it. I think there has to be a concept of educating yourself and learning from systems. So the community needs to have that drive to get knowledge, first of all, but also have the right principles and mindset. And then the ability has to come into play. How do we develop ability? And ability doesn't come from just knowing the right thing, because we can know we have to be part of Islamic government, but not have the ability. We can say you can be a jahil, or you can be somebody who's really intelligent in the system. And that means that once you've got that concept, you can start reading the right knowledge, you can start reading the right textbooks, you can read the Islamic knowledge, and then develop yourself personally, like I mentioned previously, and then continue in that vein. And I would like scholars to just probably take a bit more of an active role in this, because they're probably a bit more leadership quality in that. So how often do you hear after Jummah namaz, a scholar might say, I'm setting up a project which will be useful for the youth, and I'd need some volunteers to help out in this. Well, how many times would you hear somebody in the community start saying, and you do hear this, I'm raising money for charity, the Oscar water appeal, or certain things during Muharram or certain times of the year, but how is that precipitated and manifested? How often do we hear mental health in the picture? And as a community, as the Club 313, we are doing that. We are involving that community rhetoric and that dialogue, but we just need to build that concept around the government. I think that's a crucial point.
Yeah, amazing point. And again, we don't lack resources. We're just not reaching out to the right people. And also that central point is not where it's kind of spreading from. So there is a place, a center with a person who's leading the rest of the community, where people feel comfortable and confident enough to walk up to that person and say, I am dealing with this. Where do I go? And then that person has the list of resources to say, I'll put you in touch with this person, that organization. And it's a very structured system, and everyone's in it together. And so there is not that, well, I've done too much for this person and they haven't really done this back for me. There's not tit for tat. It's more like, I'm in this government and it's together, and we've got to kind of contribute in whatever way we can. Beautifully said. Thank you so much both for your inputs. I am pushed for time, so we're going to have to be really, really brief. We've literally got just 5 minutes and we've got a few more questions, so I just want to fly through them. So if you can just give one-liners, if you can, please. I want to know what your thoughts are about, are we in a position of like relying too much on just a miracle happening and then it's all falling into place? Do you think that's the mindset we're kind of living in at the moment? I'll go with Brother Ali first. That's okay.
The short answer is yes. There's a lot of people, you know, I sort of have heard from them, and I can observe from the actions as well that, you know, that the day we have Imam coming, inshallah, and we'll know of it, you know, things would just be flying basically, and you press a button and you'll be with him, and you know, people will start just walking out of their graves, and you know, all the weapons would be just disabled, and you know, Imam would just rise up, and everything is you know, will just be done really. So I think yes, we are relying on miracles. The only need is to how can I put it like that? Just need to read a few things in history. There are some very comprehensive accounts on you know, the state of what happens at that time, and there is a clear indication that Imam. You look at the government today, you know, how many government departments we have, all the ministers and, you know, the member of all sorts of things in one country. And then you compare that to something like United Nations, which is the whole world. So Imam would need a whole government to run that in every part of the world, with specialists in sort of in every field. And he would have, you know, God's power. So, you know, he's a divine leader. You're not saying he's like us, you know, sort of helpless type of person, and he will use that, you know, when it's sort of really, really sort of necessary in there. But there won't be miracles. Yeah, we will need to help him and take part in the government as we are now.
Yes, and I think sometimes maybe this mindset puts us in this comfort zone and makes us a bit lazy, and makes us not take our responsibility seriously enough. It's like something will happen because Allah is the best of planners, and then it's just going to fall into place one day, and then bang, it's just done, like the Big Bang Theory kind of mindset. And I think we do definitely need to get away from that and really think individually what our responsibility is in forming that government in the best way. Brother Shahzad, as quickly as you can.
Yeah, just a quick one sentence would be, yes, most likely we are relying on miracles. Look at history, look at the story of Imam Hussein, look at Imam Ali, look at their rhetoric and see how they had to struggle as well. So they didn't have miracles then, and they're the best of creatures of nations. So we need to work not to be Kufan and to be the 72.
Yes, amazing point, actually. Yes, when we reflect on history, it gives us a lot of lessons for the future. And you know, while they've performed miracles, it didn't fall into place because of a miracle. There was togetherness and the companionship. Okay, so just to close off, last two very, very quick questions is, do you think that there is too much attachment to the world with the way that we're operating in our communities? Are we too engrossed in the world right now? Brother Shazad?
So the world isn't there to make us not do stuff in there. So the concept is it's the attraction to the world and the lust and the favors of the world. But the world gives us warnings as well. If you die, you lose everything. So the world as a place is not to be attached to, but it's to learn lessons from. So I think if we are saying attachment is the lust of the world, then yes, we probably are focusing a lot more of the wealth generation. If we can learn from the world, then that attachment is better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Really good point. Brother Ali?
Yes, again, I very briefly saying, so I think it's a matter of priorities, basically. So if you get the priority right, you can enjoy the world and at the same time be ready for the Imam as well.
Yes, thank you for that. And I feel like generally as a human nation, we're so much more acquainted with our physicality, and because we use the five senses and we can feel, see, hear, touch, all of these things. And so that's all we kind of think about. But there's another dimension to us, and that's the one we neglect because we can't see it, we can't feel it, we can't touch it. And so it's one that gets left behind and sort of neglected a little bit. So I think that's something that we need to look into way more. My last question to close off today is, what are our expectations of the Imam, and what are his expectations of us? If you could tie it up as briefly as you could, Brother Ali, please.
So I think the first part, where what are our expectations of the Imam, I just say nothing. I don't expect anything from the Imam. I expect, but on the other side, so like, you know, his expectations from me. I have to be a follower, have a firm belief in whatever the sort of Imam is saying, and try and be as skillful as possible, and as alert and knowledgeable as possible, and as able as possible to support him. But I've got no expectations from him, as in, you know, in if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Brother Shazad?
So yeah, I would say that altruistically, having no expectations is probably the unique way to do it. But if we just look at the specifics of hukuk and the rights of the Imam and the rights of the ruler and the rulership, so the right would obviously be to have that government and to be just in his dealings and to be caring and kind and considerate, but also be balancing all of the needs of society in a just way. And also, we have these stories in our traditions about he's going to bring wealth and generate happiness and lots of abundance, and the world is going to be flowing with greatness. Not to expect those things, but to expect that there will be a similar sort of occurrence, and know that this is going to be on a path of justice. What our rule is we have this whole discussion that we had today about what we're doing for the Imam. Are we ready or not? So that's the things that we should be doing to literally be prepared. And obviously, I'm not saying everyone is in a position to be prepared overnight. It will take years. It will take years to get that mindset clear, but it takes time, it takes effort. And the Imam is probably expecting us to try. I think the potential is there. He just wants us to try and not be disheartened if we don't reach the goal. But when he does come, at least he can see the effort. And then obviously the prayers and the sacrifice and the forgiveness is what we should be doing as a daily basis.
Yes, I think beautifully put. There's so much what we've discussed today, and so many actually actionable points if somebody was to really kind of break down what we were talking about. Of course, it's a vast topic and the questions were really big, so we had to kind of condense them as much as possible. But thank you so much for each and every single contribution you've made. May Allah bless your efforts, and may somebody listen to this and take something from it. That's our aim. This was our first podcast, and I really hope that it landed on the hearts of some people who can take something away from it. And inshallah, we'll continue endeavor and do our best to provide anything that we can, inshallah, to continue supporting our youth and creating this environment so that we can nurture them in the way that they need. So thank you for listening, and thank you both for your time, and inshallah we will reconvene next month.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Allah Hafiz.